Brayton cycle, if you recall, is basically the ideal cycle for gas turbine engines. Okay, so it's the engine can either be used for propulsion or it can be used for power generation. It can be used for any application you prefer, but the cycle that it follows, or the ideal cycle that is used to model these gas turbine engines, is the Brayton cycle. Now, we already covered Rankine cycle in chapter 8, and we said Rankine cycle is used to model the steam power plants. And we have quite a lot of steam power plants in this country and across the world that are used for power generation. So if you're wondering why do we bother about gas turbine power plants, or why do we bother about Brayton cycle? Well, there are some advantages with gas turbine power plants, right? One advantage is the fact that these can be constructed rather quickly in a pretty short period of time, and they are less costlier than steam power plants and also pretty compact. Okay, so they have a lot of advantages in terms of their operation and their construction. Now, depending on the demand and supply of electricity, the gas turbine power plants are also very flexible. You could start up a gas turbine power plant and shut it down in the matter of a few minutes. Whereas if you're dealing with a steam power plant, it takes a pretty long time for us to, start up and shut it down. So typically, steam power plants are used for what is called as the base load, for meeting a fixed amount of load, right? So these are always kept on. The gas turbine power plants, on the other hand, are used to take care of the fluctuations in demand that you have between day and night, between summer and winter, right? We obviously know that in summer the power requirement is pretty high because everyone has switched on the ACs. So the gas power plants are typically used to meet what's called as a peaking load, right, or the peak load, and these are called the peaking power plants. And these are a very important part of the electricity generation mix because they're very flexible and they can they can take care of the peaking loads. And considering the fact that we are moving towards renewables, which are very intermittent, meaning that if you have a cloud, suddenly the output from a PV plant may go down to almost zero in a short period of time. So you need something that can start up and shut down pretty quickly. And gas turbine power plants are an ideal option. Now they are mainly used for power generation, or what's called as a stationary power generation, but they're also used for powering they're also used for powering vehicles, but mainly for aircraft propulsion, such as in the form of a jet engine, as well as for powering ships, right? There are several options, and also for powering the power plants within ships. So you have several applications of these, of course, but one of the major applications is in stationary power generation. Now, if you recall, we said in Saudi Arabia, the gas turbine power plants are contributing to 50% of the power generation, or basically in terms of the fuel, the natural gas is basically it takes 50% of the share to produce the electricity within the country, right? A lot of natural gas is being used, and of course, this is being used in the gas turbine power plants. And if you look at the future, well, the share is simply going to increase in the future, right? So even if you look at the global stage, back in 2013, the natural gas contributed to 21% of the global energy demand by fuel. But in 2040, the prediction is that it's going to increase to 24%. Now, these numbers are not absolute. I mean, it may go to 25 or even higher, but even 3 to 4% difference on the global level is very high amount of energy, right? So as we move forward, we're going to reduce our dependence on coal and oil, which are actually a little bit, they cause more pollution as compared to burning natural gas. So the idea is to reduce our dependence on coal, certainly, oil as well, and increase the amount of natural gas that we use. Within Saudi Arabia, well, in the last February, the Minister of Energy mentioned that Saudi Arabia is going to rely fully on gas power plants and renewable energy in the future. And this sort of makes sense because the gas power plants can take care of the fluctuations that you have from renewable energy. And we have a lot of gas reserves. And in fact, a huge investment is being made in the plant in Jafurah to not just to provide the gas that would be needed for power plants within the country, but also to export it. So we don't have any problem with the gas reserves. We have lots of them. And natural gas is a very good way of producing power. It produces less CO2, So it meets all the global warming requirements, and it's a better fuel to burn. Now, we would prefer to burn gas than crude oil, also because gas is difficult to transport, so it's sort of cheaper than oil. So we would prefer to sell oil at a costly price in the international market rather than just burning it here to produce electricity. When we talk about gas power plants, we said Brayton cycle is the ideal cycle to model the entire process, what is happening, and it's a very simple tool to give you some sort of a to allow you to do simple calculations and analyze what is happening in reality. Of course, the actual cycle is much more complicated, but the complication simply comes from the fact that you want to do a better prediction. You want to remove all assumptions one by one, right? But if you take apart, if you keep those assumptions together, then you get the overall picture about what to change and how to improve the efficiency, which is going to remain same even for an actual cycle. So let's go ahead and talk about the gas turbines. Now, gas turbines or gas turbine power plants can either operate on an open or a closed cycle basis. Okay, so the one that's shown here is on the left is the open cycle gas turbine. You take in air from the atmosphere, compress it to high pressure and temperature, burn it within the combustion chamber. So you have high temperature, high pressure gases going to the inlet of the turbine. You expand that in the turbine, produce some work output, and then the combustion products you send it out. You just reject it to the atmosphere, right? So this is certainly an open cycle. The combustion products that we send out to the atmosphere, well, we're not going to make use of the same things at the compressor inlet. We'll use fresh air at the compressor inlet. Of course, the combustion products are sort of causing some pollution, but the air, the environment around us, the atmosphere around us contains such large quantities of air that the composition would not change, right? So effectively, this is an open cycle system, and this is the most commonly used system, certainly, right? We are not talking about a situation where we, take back the combustion products and send it to the compressor. It does not make sense. We need fresh oxidizer. Okay, so this is one configuration, and it's the most common configuration. Another configuration would be the closed cycle type of gas turbine, where you replace the combustion chamber with a heat exchanger, right? So you have the working fluid here is not taking part in the combustion process. It could be air, it could be something else. Okay, it could be argon, it could be neon, it could be any other gas you think would make sense from the specific heat point of view or specific heat ratios. So you send it into the you send it into the heat exchanger where it gets heated, comes out at high temperature and pressure, expand within the turbine, and then it rejects heat within this heat exchanger to the surroundings so that it comes back to the initial state. Here we're using the same working fluid throughout. Okay, so this is another way in which you could generate power, but this is less commonly used way. I mean, you could also use CO2 as a working fluid in this sort of cycle. There are multiple options. Okay, so here, of course, as we are discussing for gas turbine power plant, or as we have discussed before for the Rankine cycle, whenever we have these components such as compressors, turbines, heat exchangers, or combustion chambers, we're talking about some mass of air coming in and another mass going out, right? So these are all open systems, and we need to model them as control volumes. So when we are looking at their energy balances, what we're dealing with is changes in enthalpy, right? And this is one difference when you compare it with the internal combustion engines, where we were looking at things in terms of where we were looking at closed systems. So we were looking at changes in delta U. Okay, so this is one difference that exists between the two. Now, when we talk about the Brayton cycle, just like we had for the Otto cycle and the diesel cycle, we make use of the air standard assumptions, right? So Brayton cycle also follows the air standard assumptions, but the ones that are for the Brayton cycle are slightly different than the one we discussed before. Okay, not very different, but slightly different. So let's look at this, what the air standard assumptions are here for the Brayton cycle. First of all, we assume that the working fluid is air. Okay, this is what we are assuming in the air standard Brayton cycle. And we treat as though the air is behaving like an ideal gas. Okay, just like the same thing before. Here, we do not have any requirement that it goes in a closed system. That's one change. The other assumption are similar to what we did before. We say that we are replacing the combustion process by a heat addition process from an external source, and replacing the exhaust process by a heat rejection process to the ambient air. Okay, what is different here is that when we spoke about the air standard assumptions for those cycles, for the Otto or for the diesel cycle in general, we did not mention what sort of what sort of process the heat addition was occurring at, because it was different for different cycles. But here we are very specific. Here we're replacing the combustion process with a constant pressure heat addition, because in a Brayton cycle, heat addition always occurs at a constant pressure. Same way, we're replacing the exhaust process with a constant pressure heat rejection process, right? So we are being very specific about the nature of the heat addition and heat rejection process. That's one change that we see here when we talk about the Brayton cycle. And just to compare and contrast, when we were looking at those internal combustion engine cycles, Otto cycle, diesel cycle, or the dual cycle, the heat rejection was occurring at constant volume in those cycles. Here it is occurring at constant pressure. So this is one sort of a difference that we see. Okay. Now, having looked at these assumptions, we can go ahead and look at how the cycle would look like, the sort of a Brayton cycle that we would want to model. So you have the typical isentropic compression within the compressor, right? And then you have the heat exchanger where you're adding heat at constant pressure. So it's constant pressure heat addition from 2 to 3. And then it expands within the turbine. This turbine expansion that happens within the turbine is also happening in an isentropic process. And eventually, the heat rejection that happens, it happens to the environment, but you could think of it as a heat exchanger, right, where we are rejecting all the heat to the environment, and we're getting back to state one, which is at the same temperature and pressure where we always started at. So this rejection process also occurs at constant pressure. Okay, so if you just look at the processes, if you just look at these processes that we're talking about here, isentropic compression followed by constant pressure heat addition, then isentropic expansion followed by constant pressure heat rejection. These are the exact same processes that happen in the Rankine cycle. The only difference is in a Rankine cycle, we have a working fluid that is undergoing a phase change. Okay, whereas when we talk about a Brayton cycle, we don't have any phase change. So the only difference between these two cycles is the fact that in one cycle you have phase change occurring, in the other cycle you don't have any phase change. The working fluid is in the gaseous state throughout. That's the only difference here. The processes are exactly the same. Any questions before we move ahead?
Clear, sir.
Okay. All right, let's just move ahead then. Now, let's just talk about the energy balance, right? So this is sort of pretty easy, pretty similar to what we have been doing till now. You just need to look at the 4 different processes that we have, and we write it in terms of the changes in enthalpy. And the reason we're looking at changes in enthalpy is because we're dealing with an open system. Okay, so heat addition happens during the process 2 to 3, so it's H3 minus H2. 3 to 4 you have expansion, so this is work output. So it's work turbine, H3 minus H4. And then here you have heat rejection, so it's Q out, it's H4 minus H1. And 1 to 2 you need to provide work input, so that's the compressor work, that again is H2 minus H1. So these are the general formulation, right? I mean, if you're looking at constant specific heats, you could replace the delta H with Cp delta T. Okay, but that is for later. For in the general purpose, this is how you're gonna write. And the key part that we're interested in is the thermal efficiency when we talk about any of these cycles. So the thermal efficiency formula is going to be similar. Turbine work out minus compressor work in divided by Qn. You can also write it as Qn minus Q out. Okay, it's your choice. Both will give you the same answer. So this is the expression that we have for the thermal efficiency. You got to be careful not to miss out on the compressor work input here, because this compressor work input is it's pretty high. It's non-negligible when you consider the Brayton cycle. Okay. Now, again, a key point that I want to mention to you here is that this formulation written in terms of the enthalpy changes right here, it's going to remain the same whether you're dealing with an ideal cycle or an actual cycle. Okay, this formula will not change. What will change is the value of H4 and H2, right? These H4 would be higher than the ideal case, which is H4s, and same way H2 would be higher than H2s. So the changes will be in the value of enthalpies that you get at the end of the expansion process or at the end of the compression process, but the formulation would remain exactly the same. Okay, so this is one important thing that we're looking at. Now, the other thing that we would want to determine is the backwork ratio as well. And backwork ratio, if you recall from our discussion in chapter 8, it's simply the ratio of the work input for the compressor divided by the work output for the turbine. Now, this is a number that you would want to keep as small as possible, right? So you don't want to spend a lot of work in the compressor because that's sort of something that's lost, right, from what you're producing in the turbine. So you want this to be as small as possible. But when we look at Brayton cycle, this backwork ratio is typically of the order of 40%, so it can vary between 30 to 80%, right? And just to give you a comparison, for the Rankine cycle, where we were compressing liquid water, the backwork ratio was pretty small. For the cases that we solved, I think it was smaller than 1%. So you can see there's a huge difference here. I mean, when you're looking at the backwork ratio for a Rankine cycle, it's so small that you may also, for if you're doing a quick calculation, you may maybe cancel. You can leave out the pump work in, right? It'll still give you a reasonably close value of thermal efficiency. It'll give you higher value, but it'll give you reasonably close value. But here the compressor work input is very large. Okay, it's consumes a lot of work input to compress the gas from your initial pressure P1 to the final pressure P2. All right, and this is simply because of the nature of the fluid that you're compressing. It's much easier to compress liquid to a higher pressure as compared to compressing a vapor, compressing gas to a higher pressure, right? It just requires more work input. So that is basically what appears here in terms of the backwork ratio. Now, despite the backwork ratio being so high, on the whole, we are able to achieve high thermal efficiencies for a Brayton cycle simply by operating at much higher temperatures as compared to, again, the Rankine cycle. Okay, so this is how the two cycles would compare. They're very similar in a lot of aspects, but they're also different in terms of the operation range.